Hey folks, we're sponsored today by Mack Weldon, the best place online for guys to get quality underwear, shirts, and socks. Mack Weldon has the most comfortable stuff around, whether you're a boxers or briefs guy, whether you like the crew neck or the V-neck or the tank top. This stuff looks great. All their products are antimicrobial, which means they naturally eliminate odor, and they perform well too, whether you're working out, going to work, going on a date, recording a podcast. Just everyday life. Give them a try. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off using the promo code Harris. Now let's get to the show.
It's the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome in. Thank you very much for listening. I am Chris Harris. This is the Harris Football Podcast. Thank you so much for continuing to care even slightly about the NFL after Thursday night's utter mess. The Niners offense was a joke. Colin Kaepernick looked like a helpless kitten out there. Russell Wilson played pretty badly too. Beautiful deep shot to Tyler Lockett, but both picks were dreadful decisions. Marshawn Lynch, only guy who did much of anything. But he was really good, but of course, he missed the second series of the game because he was vomiting into what appeared to be some kind of industrial laundry hamper. And as I was watching the puking, I was reminded of my long Seinfeld-esque vomit-free streak. I really think it must have been like 10 plus years, maybe longer. And then I spent a few months in New York. This was a few years ago, and I did it on back-to-back weekends. First, I got food poisoning from leftover pizza, and that was charming. And then the very next week, I got the stomach flu, and that was bad. And that's the quick story here. I was on the extreme west side of Manhattan, like 42nd Street, almost to the West Side Highway, in a tall apartment building, and I was just loopy, like really high fever, no medicine, sweating. It's just freezing outside. Throwing up like Marshawn, like maybe hallucinating, and for some reason I decided it was necessary to make 3 separate trips that night to the CVS that was downstairs, outside, across the street, and down like an avenue block and a half. Okay, so fine. There I am, stumbling around, hallucinating, and the third time I went in there, I don't really even remember in the haze what I was looking for, maybe like vitamin C or a bucket. And I was in the checkout line, and everything was a total blur, and I turned around, sweating profusely, and I saw Miles Dyson. You know who Miles Dyson is? He's the guy who invented Skynet, Terminator 2, the African-American dude who dies all heroically at the end. Spoiler alert. He's standing behind me in line. And dude, let me tell you, I freaked out for about 5 minutes. I was pretty sure the T-1000 was coming in there to get me. I think I would have thrown up again in the CVS line, except there was nothing left in my stomach. Fortunately, I did have my bucket. Anyway, Marshawn, I feel you, man. And the next day I looked it up. The actor who played Miles Dyson, Wikipedia search says it's Joe Morton. He really did live in the city, and it was probably just him out for some midnight Tootsie Rolls.
Today's kickoff.
It's a big show. You're listening at the right time. So first I'll get to some NFL practice news, but then, hey, believe it or not, we're at the mid-season point of the fantasy football regular season, so it's awards time. I will give you my Midseason Huggy Awards, the name of which, of course, is inspired by our phone number here on the show, sunk by a hug. By the way, feel free to leave a message if you have a Harris sighting. I'll give you my take on who's been good, maybe a little bit who's been bad, and who might change in the second half. And then you know him, you love him, Cousin Josh will be on the horn, and will do his Baggy Awards, where he calls people trash bags. That's pretty much Josh's role on this show. And we'll have a great listener song in Cousin Josh's honor. We're sponsored today by BetDSI.com, the online sportsbook where I play. If you've been looking for a way to get some action over this football season, honestly, absolutely, the best place to do it is BetDSI. There's just no drama, no silly sponsorship things where they're putting their name on the side of a blimp. BetDSI just knows what they're doing, and, they do it really well. They get A-plus reviews on many sportsbook review sites. They've been around just about as long as there's been an internet, for heaven's sake, and they're dedicated to paying you your winnings. It's actually a site where many professional handicappers choose to play because BetDSI is reputable, and its lines are always solid. So give it a try, and in fact, if you go to BetDSI.com right now and enter the promo code Harris10, within a couple hours, they'll put $10 into your account for free, and that can be your first wager. It's fun. I'm really an account holder there, and if you've been looking for a place to play, go to BetDSI.com and use the promo code Harris, no space, the number 10. And as always, I like to remind you that with stuff like BetDSI and DraftKings, I really do enjoy playing, but I enjoy it in moderation. And if you have trouble with moderation in this area, please do get help. Go to gamblersanonymous.org.
Injury news.
Well, Carlos Hyde told reporters before the game Thursday that he has a stress fracture in his foot. And if there's one person you should definitely listen to about injuries, it's the player himself, because those guys totally went to med school. The point is, Hyde played Thursday night, and if he really had a stress fracture, it seems mighty doubtful he'd have been able to. I guess the line can apparently be pretty thin between stress fracture and bone bruise and stress reaction, so I wouldn't go off half-cocked based on what a player says about his medical condition. I think the larger point is, the Niners' offense can occasionally look like a dumpster fire. That's way more seeming like Carlos Hyde's actual problem right now. Ben Roethlisberger's out there doing some stuff in Steelers practice, but we still don't know if he'll go. Tough dude. If active, I personally think you play him. I think he'd be number 3 on my quarterback list, even with a shaky knee. I think you upgrade the Steelers receivers, but we're really not going to know, probably until Sunday. Dez Bryant is working out off to the side at Cowboys practice, has not been ruled out yet for Week 7. If he's active, duh. I don't think you can plan on having him just yet. Maybe next week is more realistic. But with this injury, it can be a tease for a good long time. Jeremy Maclin supposedly has a chance to practice Friday, which could lead him to being able to play in Week 7, which is a surprise to me because that was a bad-looking concussion. I haven't added him back into the ranks just yet, but he's a top 20 guy this week if he starts. TJ Yeldon has been able to do some practice work in jolly old England, which gives him a chance. He's questionable officially, but I would think that if he's practicing, he's more likely than not going to play. If you're a Yeldon owner or a DFS starter of Yeldon, you'll have to be up early to check the inactives for that very early morning game, U.S. time. Jordan Reed has been cleared from his concussion, and the expectation is that Washington will have him back for their game against Tampa. Some Charger news. Keenan Allen hasn't practiced yet this week because of his hip injury. People around the team are getting leaked the information that he'll go Sunday against the Raiders. Maybe that's true. Teams lie. It would be nice to see him practice on Friday, especially because that's a late game on Sunday, so stay tuned there. Antonio Gates has a knee issue, and it's the same thing. The assumption is that he'll play, but not a horrible idea to have someone available late or at night just in case. Stevie Johnson got in a limited practice Thursday, and of course he's missed 2 games with that injured hamstring. It's just Stevie's luck that Phil Rivers goes for 500-plus last week, and Stevie sits out. Again, late game, got to have at least ideas for alternatives available, but in PPR leagues, still seems like Stevie has a lot of startability if he's active. Charles Johnson is set to return from his rib injury, but we really don't know whether he's lost his starting job to Stephon Diggs. Personally, I think I'd want to let this play out for a week before investing too heavily in either guy. Certainly the Vikings could definitely, justify keeping Diggs in the lineup. He's been their only productive wideout so far this year, and Johnson wasn't good for a month, but that's not a sure thing. I didn't have Eric Ebron in my initial ranks, but I put him there after he practiced on Thursday. Apparently he seems ready to come back from his knee issue, and he's a tight end. He becomes one of those pretty startable, borderline guys most weeks. Austin Seferian-Jenkins came out of the ranks as he's not practicing. He'd be about at Ebron's level if he did wind up being active this weekend, but at this point, not practicing, not feeling great that this is his return week. I put Matt Jones back in the ranks and took Chris Thompson out. Jones's toe apparently healthy enough for action this week, and Thompson hasn't been ruled out, but right now he can't practice because of a back injury. Back to the Bills, Tyrod Taylor and Sammy Watkins both out this week. They're out of the ranks. Marcus Mariota sounds kind of unlikely to play with his sprained MCL, but that's not definitive as of this recording. I don't think he plays. And finally, Joik Bell doing his weekly dance. Or rather, his Achilles is so bad he can't dance. But once again, after looking possible to play last week and not playing, and looking possible to play this week, now he's been limited in practice, so we really don't know if Week 7 is his return. Theo Riddick has a groin thing. He's expected to play, and basically the Lions' backfield is still a FEMA site. We're also sponsored today by DraftKings. We're heading into the weekend, and I'm doing it again. The first 3 people to challenge me on DraftKings, I'll take the challenge and go head-to-head. My name on there is Kid Centrifuge. If I don't accept your challenge, please don't be mad at me. We did this last week, and I got over 100 challenges, so, bear with me. But hey, it's an incentive to listen to the podcast right away, right? So that you get a chance to play against me. Anyway, hopefully we've helped convert some of you. I think the head-to-head feature and the ability to start a private group and invite your league mates to play in a one-week tournament, I think that's one of the most fun things about DraftKings. It's just an awesome way to still get psyched about fantasy every week, even if your commissioner-style team is a little bit of a disaster. If you still haven't tried DraftKings, play a free contest on me. Go to DraftKings.com and use the promo code Harris, and they'll give you a free game to try it out. That's DraftKings.com, promo code Harris, and challenge Kid Centrifuge. Yes, it's the Huggy Award mid-season extravaganza. At some point we actually may need a Huggy Award theme song of its own, but anyway, here we are, the first annual mid-season Huggy Awards. As you may remember from the preseason Huggy Awards, Amber tends not to make herself available for these award shows. It's not in her contract. So instead we have to go to Eva, our Amber prototype, who's maybe not quite as advanced sounding.
I take offense at that remark.
But anyway, here we go. Our first mid-season Huggy Award is
Midseason Fantasy MVP.
Yeah, unlike some of the other award shows, we'll get our big one out of the way early when there's no suspense, so people aren't going to sit around past midnight to hear the winner. The fantasy MVP so far is obviously Devontae Freeman, not Devontae Morgan Freeman, though I do think the fact that Devontae Morgan Freeman left messages on Sunk by a Hug before the season started should have clued us all in that Devontae Freeman would be a superstar. This is one nobody could have seen coming. Here was a kid the Falcons themselves didn't believe in, to the point where they took Tevin Coleman in the 3rd round this spring. Freeman was nothing special as a rookie, but he's exploded through 6 weeks. I've said this, I do think a gentle decline is in store for Freeman over the second half, but you don't need to hear that speech again. This one's simple. In VBD terms, he's so clearly the MVP. Hey, in absolute fantasy point terms, he's number 2 in points per game to Tom Brady. An incredible development, well-earned. Devontae Freeman on pace for 27 touchdowns this year.
Midseason Fantasy LVP.
So the least valuable fantasy player so far this year, I don't think it's any less obvious. It's C.J. Anderson. You know what? There really isn't even an honorable mention. You're looking for a non-injured top 20 pick who's flamed out. It's Anderson. We believed the Broncos offense would stay its well-oiled self for a 4th straight year, but that just isn't happening. Whether it's Manning's arm or the offensive line or Kubiak's schemes or some combination of all those things, the juicy goal line work just isn't going to be there for any Denver running back. I think it was Andy Behrens who came on the show just in the first week or 2 of the season and was like, listen, if this Broncos offense goes bad, Anderson's a disaster because he's not that awesome a player. And Andy's right. I mean, I think Anderson's probably a fine player, but with no room to run, he's not going to make much happen by himself. just to put a fine point on that Broncos offense from 2012 to 2014, also known as the Peyton Manning era before the offense went bad, they had 160 offensive snaps inside an opponent's 5. Second most behind New England. This year, 11 snaps.
Most likely player to fall off a cliff.
The likeliest player to fall off a cliff, I might say Freeman, because the cliff is pretty high, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be terrible going forward, just not the fantasy MVP. I'll definitely pick someone else. I would say Gary Barnidge, but it feels like that would be like picking on Bambi or something like that. It's such a cuddly story, this 30-year-old journeyman. So I'm not going to say him either. Has to be like a top 25 VBD player so far. I'll say, pretty sure Jamal Charles, that guy, probably isn't going to get you too much. All right, I'll say James Jones. It's not like I don't like him, but touchdown dependent, only 21 grabs so far this year. 6 of them have been touchdowns. It's not like he's never done that before with Aaron Rodgers, and you never want to rule out an Aaron Rodgers target as a guy who can sustain an unrealistically high ratio for touchdowns. But, I think I'd be willing to trade Jones if someone wants to treat him like a top 20 receiver. And actually, right now, he's number 9 in terms of fantasy points per game. So it's James Jones.
Rookie of the year so far.
Carlos Williams was on his way to consideration for Rookie of the Year, but obviously his concussion has him set aside for a few weeks now, so he's not the winner. As excited as I am about Todd Gurley, he's only seen meaningful action in 2 games. It's been a pretty terrible 6 weeks for rookies, actually. I think I'll say Amari Cooper. And in VBD terms, right now, he's only barely inside the top 70. He's only got 2 touchdowns. And in 3 of his 5 games, he's been below 50 yards receiving. So let's not, paint him or Derek Carr as Mr. Wonderful just yet. But, beyond the numbers, I've gotten to watch 5 games worth of coaches tape on him, and you see the quickness in and out of breaks that will eventually make him a star. Like I said, rough year so far for rookies. David Johnson's made a few plays. TJ Yeldon was in consideration, but he's only found the end zone once. Willie Snead was an undrafted free agent, and he's become a fringe factor, but mostly pretty ugly if you invested heavily in rookies, at least so far.
Best buy low candidate.
Oh, we still have a bunch of buy low candidates. I certainly considered Randall Cobb. I considered Andrew Luck and Melvin Gordon and Latavius Murray. I think my best one is Eddie Lacy. I do radio hits, and, the hosts are like, hey, Chris, what should fantasy owners do with Eddie Lacy now that he's no longer the starter in Green Bay? And I'm like, wait, whoa, are you sure? I mean, yeah, for 1 week, it definitely appeared to be the case, but I don't want to paint James Starks as a great player or as a guy who even got a huge workload against the Chargers in Week 6. It was like 11 touches, 10 carries. He played 27 snaps. Lacy played 18 snaps. So, yeah, I mean, any way you slice it, Starks was ahead of Lacy in a platoon, and Lacy did himself no favors, getting stuffed inside the red zone, fumbling later in the game. But man, we have short memories. Eddie Lacy's a very good player. He hasn't gotten fat. Stop with the narratives. He scored 24 touchdowns his first 2 years in the league. Maybe you can argue the Packers offense isn't quite as good as it was the past couple years, maybe with no Jordy Nelson, but it's still really good, and I think Lacy is a significantly better player than James Starks. Do I have some worry in my heart after that mess against San Diego? I surely do. I'm not telling you everything is bright and shiny. Coming out of the bye, Lacy could still be lodged in a platoon, and it may be really annoying to live with. But we're talking buy low here, and it's a long season, and the Packers are undefeated, and they have Super Bowl designs. Yeah, and of course I am aware that Starks was actually the guy who helped Green Bay to their last title, but I stand by my assertion that Lacy will be heard from again, and this is the perfect moment, the perfect apex of panic for you to approach the Lacy owner in your league and offer Travis Benjamin and Chris Johnson and get yourself Eddie Lacy. Hey, trade for him, bench him for the first game back if you need to, just to make yourself feel better. We told you DeMarco Murray was a buy low. We told you LaShawn McCoy and Marshawn Lynch were buy lows. I think talent usually wins out. And Lacy has really good feet for a big back. I think he's a good buy low. Remember, we're talking buy low. We're not talking, oh, you can have Chris Ivory, I'll take Eddie Lacy. No. I do have Lacy higher than Ivory on my rest of the season ranks, but Ivory's red hot. You shouldn't have to pay that much to get Lacy. And if the Lacy owner in your league demands full price for the name value for Eddie Lacy, I think you just move on and just see what happens.
Best buy candidate, almost no matter the price.
So let's forget buy low. How about just a guy I want to buy? It's Todd Gurley. His value is as high as can be. He's basically played as a starting running back in 2 games, and the numbers were outrageous in both. And not only that, the tape is outrageous too. This is a guy who tore his ACL less than a year ago. I can't promise there won't be hiccups, but I'm such a believer. If you were listening back in August, I told cousin Josh I thought Gurley would someday be the number 1 player in fantasy. I just didn't expect that it might be next year. And certainly he's ahead of schedule. I did not think this summer, coming off a torn ACL, that he could be this good, but, he is that good. It's amazing. Plays for a mediocre team, pretty bad offensive line, terrible quarterback. I can't promise you that he'll get you the most fantasy points every week, but I can promise you that the talent is there, and I really want to own him.
Best waiver stash.
So, the best waiver stash of the moment. I went with the same criteria we usually use on Tuesday shows, which is the player has to be owned in fewer than 1/3 of Yahoo leagues. And it's really hard because the players who are owned in fewer than 1/3 of Yahoo leagues are kind of an ugly group. There's nobody here who I'd say, oh, you're an idiot for not owning him. But my approach here was I'm looking for potential high upside guys. Guys who have the potential to turn things around, even though things are going really badly for them right now. And, we've seen them be guys, though, who won't just nibble around the edges. If they got it right, they could actually turn your completely around. You could make your team a lot better, maybe make you a title winner. So high upside, the downside of giving you utterly nothing, which both of these guys have done to this point. First is Charles Johnson. I mentioned him earlier in the show. I do think this is a moment where we're really caught up with Stephon Diggs, and I don't think Diggs is a total flash in the pan. He's been legitimately good for a couple games, which is a couple games more than Charles Johnson. But, Johnson is bigger and faster than Diggs, and we were saying the same stuff about him this time last year. He comes back from rib injury this week. I guess, if I had to say for sure, I would make the guess that Diggs will be the starter ahead of him, but that's no sure thing, and Johnson is talented, and I would not say about him, what a bum, can't play at all. A pretty good player. I still think he could turn it around for you. I don't hate him as a stash. The other guy I have in mind is, get this, speaking of vomit, Joik Bell. I mentioned it earlier, but he's still not completely right in the Achilles, where he had surgery this summer. And, at this point, it seems the likeliest scenario is that he just doesn't get it right all year and fades into the mist. But, just in case. In a 12-team league, I would not mind stashing him. Like I said, odds are things don't work out for him, and the odds are things don't work out for any Lions running back all year. But Bell is a good player when he's healthy. My stance on him. I wouldn't mind giving him a few weeks of roster time to see if he can do something, if that line were to sort of accidentally start to look better. Again, probably not happening. But, rather than nibble at the edge of your roster, I feel like stashes like these guys could be jackpots on the off chance that they hit.
Bold, midseason, call.
Okay, we're looking for a guy who can come out of nowhere and, be a difference maker. He can be owned in a lot of leagues, but he's not someone who's starring in any leagues right now. But someone who I think can blow up. You might remember last year on my ESPN podcast, my guy in this category was Odell Beckham. That's a lot of pressure to live up to. I might not quite hit that level of home run here, but I'll say Brandon Cooks. I know. I'm as surprised as you are. He was on my bust list this summer because I thought he was getting drafted way too high. And let's face it, there's a chance cousin Josh lists him as a trash bag in his Baggy Awards coming up here shortly. But given where his stock is right now, Cooks is someone I'm interested in investing in because I do think he could be a game changer. Now listen, again, they can't all be Beckham. So I admit, there's a better chance that Cook stays quiet. But for this segment, the last one of the Huggy Awards, I went back and watched every Cooks target so far this year, and I like the player. Honestly, feels to me like the problem has been Drew Brees. There have been, I think, 3 separate times so far this year where Cooks ran a deep route and he was out in the clear for a touchdown and Brees underthrew him really badly. Of course, Brees could stay gimpy the rest of the year, definitely. Assuming that the Saints, as presently constituted, are bouncing back to elite production, it's probably dumb. And if things are going to stay short and constipated with latter-day Brees, maybe the Willie Sneads of the world really are going to be bigger factors than Cooks. But the Saints' pass offense is best when they get Cooks the ball, and you see that they know that. They jet sweep him usually once a week. They want him to run slants to mix up his routes. He's a dangerous little water bug. I think there's some Antonio Brown to his game. He's not just a slot guy. I give him a chance to pop and become a fantasy factor in the second half. Listen, obviously, this is meant to be, it's the last of the Huggy Awards, right? And I'm intending to make a bold midseason call, so, it probably won't happen, but I don't mind giving Cooks a stash just in case it does.
Today's guest.
The dude's a trash bag in my book. Trash bags in paradise. He's the lemon-flavored Italian ice. In my mind, he's already out of the NFL. Nothing to like. I'm ashamed of myself. Mom, I love you.
Well, you know what that music is. It means it's Friday, and it's Cousin Josh. You can follow him on Twitter, @DetectiveFish, F-I-S-C-H. Hey, Josh, how are you?
I'm doing pretty great, man.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that you got some Chipotle satisfaction.
I did. I'm back on the Chipotle bandwagon for the 15th time this year. So
they sent you a gift card in exchange for your woes and miseries.
Yeah, and that's the way the world should be.
And you tweeted out a picture of the gift card, and then you went last night for your Chipotle dinner. And how was it?
It was great. I mean, again, the service was subpar. They did the Houdini move at the cash register where you go to pay and they just go to the back, to just chill out and play, game of cards. But other than that, it was good.
Okay, so last couple weeks we've talked about songs, and you've had a lot of songs dedicated to you, and we have one to play you right now. It's not quite what you requested. Frankly, I think it's better. So here we go.
I'm excited.
Here's to you, Allen Robinson. Cousin Josh loves you more than you know. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If I start you please, Allen Robinson. Canton holds a place for you today. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Running to the open space, you know where Bortles throws. Puts it in your hands after he pump fakes. There's a golden jacket just for Robinson to wear. On the way, it's in the mail from Detective Fish. Where have you gone, C.J. Anderson? Our nation turns its lonely eyes to you. Woo, woo, woo. What's that you say, Allen Robinson? Get the vacuums left and gone away. Hey, 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 trash bag.
Dude, that's unbelievable. That's not only is The Graduate one of my favorite movies, but that's just unbelievable. I'm 100% serious. If you give me those people's addresses, I will actually send edible arrangements to them. I'm a man of my word. Anyone who knows me knows that, and I will send edible arrangements to anyone involved in that song.
All right. Well, Chris Gentile is the fellow who did it. He said, "Hey Harris, I did a version of the Lemonheads version of Allen Robinson. The Where Have You Gone C.J. Anderson line was originally tweeted by @SledZib." So we give a little thanks to SledZib too. But so Chris, I think I'm going to be doing a Skype session with Chris because he won trivia on Thursday night. So, Chris, we'll talk about your address to get some edible arrangements.
Yeah, and I promise you that pineapple will be nice and ripe.
All right, so the folks have heard the Midseason Huggies, and of course those are the happy positive awards that I give out, well, as happy and positive as I can get. And now we bring the Dark Prince in, cousin Josh, to do the Midseason Baggy Awards. So this is midseason of the fantasy season, obviously. Josh, do you like being called the Dark Prince of the Harris Football Podcast?
I think it's Mr. Dark Prince. But yeah, I don't mind it, man. I don't mind a little gloom and doom.
Yeah, I know you don't. All right, so I've got, what do I have? I think 8 categories for you. Most of them involve football. Some of them don't. And I'm going to, see what your answers are about the season so far and what's to come. We're going to have fun, but we're also going to give advice that's going to help folks, I'm sure.
I've been super helpful. I think I told someone to drop Devonta Freeman for Kyrie Robinson like 6 weeks ago.
I don't think you really did that. All right. So here's the first Baggy Award, the Midseason Baggies. The player who's been good so far, you most think will turn into a trash bag.
And the award goes to Chris Johnson.
Oh.
So CJ currently ranked 12th at running back, which to me just seems insane. This was a guy I didn't even factor in at the beginning of the year. Comes into Arizona, starts getting some touches, and all of a sudden he's ranked 12th at the running back position. I don't know. To me, this kind of seems a little bit like the Fitzgerald situation there, but Fitzgerald, I think, is way more talented right now. There's just still a bunch of different running backs there, a lot of mouths to feed on offense. You still have the potential Carson Palmer injury, which I think we all know is coming at some point. And you look at the last 3 weeks, he's still averaging less than 15 touches, I think, over those last 3 weeks. And without that 30-pointer early on in the year, this just seems like smoke and mirrors to me, and I don't even think it's if this guy's going to turn into a trash bag. It's when he's going to become a trash bag.
It's not a good. It's a good call. It's not a bad call. I think I would have disagreed until this past week against the Steelers. I did not. I thought it was the first time he didn't have gaping wide rushing lanes to run through,
yep.
And as soon as he didn't have that, it was like, oh, I don't really have anything else other than running straight forward. So I think that's kind of a pretty good call. All right, so let's turn it on its head. The player who's been a trash bag so far, you most think will wind up being pretty good in the second half of the fantasy regular season.
So I'm going to let this guy actually submarine my fantasy team in multiple leagues, and I'm going to double down on Jordan Matthews.
Oh.
Dude, I cannot get away from this guy.
Duck Hands Jr.
That's right. Larry Donnell's close friend. But yeah, I know I said a week ago to snag him right before that Giants game. And he got 11 targets. Yeah, he only had 6 catches for 59 yards.
And he fumbled one of the catches right after he caught it.
It was horrible. But I just refuse to believe this guy is a piece of garbage. I know he scored like 6 points or less in 4 straight, but he's got a great frame. We've seen him last year put up great numbers. I think you probably still have about a week and a half to get him, and here's why. They're going into Carolina this week, the Eagles. We know they're going to get annihilated in that game. That'll be Bradford's last game of the season because they go into their bye week, week 8. I actually have the script. Chip Kelly sent me the script before this. So they're going to go into their bye week, week 8. At that point, they'll announce Sam Bradford's no longer their starter. Mark Sanchez comes out in week 9 in Dallas. Jordan Matthews erupts. Everyone sends me a bunch of tweets saying, honestly, Josh, you're a great guy. Thank you. There's your next 2.5 weeks.
That's the next 2.5 weeks of my life that have been compressed. I like it. All right, so in La Liga, I own Jordan Matthews. Clearly, we need to talk trade.
Oh, yeah, we can do that. We can do that off the air after this.
All right. That was really funny. All right, man. So I don't think I agree after being tied to Jordan Matthews a little too closely. I think I disagree on that one. But, it was funny enough that I'll give you the call. All right, here's a non-football question for you. Still part of the Midseason Baggy Awards, though. The trash baggiest movie you've seen all year.
So it's a little Noah Baumbach number I like to call While We're Young. So
it was terrible.
I got fooled into going to this because I'm a neurotic New Yorker filled with anxiety, and everyone's like, yo, this is like so Woody Allen. It doesn't hit any of those chords. I'll tell you what.
It's bad.
It's just, if you want to see a good Noah Baumbach movie, see
Mrs. America.
America.
Yeah, it's good.
That's a good movie. I'll tell you what, you're not going to find the While We're Young poster autographed over my bedside with Jerry Stackhouse's autograph. It's just, if you want an hour and 45 minutes of your life ruined, I would say see this movie. And then they throw in like this big reveal, like it's Usual Suspects, that has nothing to do with the plot.
That's true.
So it's, you know.
It's not a good movie. But he made 2 this year, so it's okay because one of them was good.
Yeah.
So do you have you taken that picture, that Jerry Stackhouse autographed picture yet, and tweeted it out?
I felt horrible. It was on my list of things to do this weekend when I was home to see my mom, Nora. But I just, I was just having such a great time with my mom that, my mind went somewhere else, and I totally forgot to snap that photo. But I will get it done the next time I go home. You guys all have my word.
Just like the edible arrangements.
The edible arrangements will go out. You'll see.
All right. Okay, so let's see. I wanted to get, you'll see this is a weirdly named category here, but I wanted to get to something that will actually be useful for people.
Okay.
The least trash baggy waiver ad who's currently owned in fewer than 1/3 of Yahoo leagues. Basically, I was trying to turn it into a good, but I had to say least trash baggy. But the point here is the best waiver ad who's available right now in 2/3 of leagues or more.
So I found this one, and again, I really combed the waiver wire and looked for everyone at like 33% and under, and I found Jay Cutler.
You really combed, did you?
Some people call him Jason Cutler, but I found Jay Cutler, and not only is he part of that catchy Alex Smith theme song that you wrote, but I think this is a guy coming off 3 straight weeks of 20 points or more. I think he might be a decent pickup for anyone who's got the Sam Bradford woes right now, getting sick of Peyton Manning. You got Alshon Jeffrey back healthy throughout that monster game. They're coming into that bye week now, so I think after that, he might be a decent spot start in a few places. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's a league changer, but yeah, as a spot start. But you're right. I mean, the pickings are kind of slim. Earlier in the show, I referred to my top waiver ads in the same kind of category. I said Charles Johnson because I know Stephon Diggs has been great, but I think Charles Johnson's a better version, and I hope. I'm not promising anything, but I would say as like a guy who could maybe change leagues, and then I said Joique Bell because, we still haven't seen anybody take control of that line. I don't think it's going to happen with either guy, but I would say
I have Charles Johnson. He was kind of that honorable mention just because I have him sitting on the bench in one of my leagues, and I'm just like, please do something, dude.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Both of those guys are probably not going to do anything, but, if I'm looking for someone to turn around a league, Yeah.
Yep.
All right. We're halfway through the Midseason Baggy Awards with Cousin Josh. Do you like my radio reset, even though we're not on radio?
Oh, dude, it was great just now. I was like, what's he doing?
All right, the next category is the secret trash bag. I was very proud of myself for calling it the secret trash bag.
Yeah.
It's a guy who you wouldn't necessarily drop or trade away, but there's a point this season when he is going to kill you.
So we should actually just name this award the annual New England Patriots Award because I think this is tailor-made for that team. And I'm going with Deion Lewis here.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like it.
And here's why. We all know what Bill Belichick will do to you. It's like you're going to go in with this guy as your RB2. He's consistently putting up solid outputs. He's still even throwing out some 15, 20-point games. But this is not a guy you want in that week 14, 15, 16 when you spend your entire year getting to that moment. And then this guy is going to get, seated on a bench for LeGarrette Blount because Bill Belichick's a fan of While We're Young or something like that. And Deion Lewis, just never saw that film. But for real, it's just he's still averaging 12 touches a game over his last few. And I know that New England offense is just super lethal right now, but I just refuse to go into a fantasy playoffs with this guy as a staple in my lineup.
Well, I mean, but the point would be, you kind of can't trade him away, you kind of can't drop him, right? And that's what the category is. It's like
you're got to ride this guy.
Right, you're stuck with him, but you're just worried he's a secret trash bag.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, that's the category, and I think Deion Lewis is a perfect example. That's a good one. All right, my other non-football question for you. I was just kind of, I wanted to even it out, but we don't have all night, so can't necessarily give you all the trash bag culture questions that I want to give you, but you're an NBA guy.
Yep.
And the season's getting close, so I know you're getting hyped. Are you going to play fantasy hoops this year?
I can't get into fantasy hoops.
No.
I tried it like 2 or 3 different times.
Yeah.
It's so tough.
Yeah, I played once. I'm not that into it, but a lot of listeners are into it. But anyway, not even for fantasy. Just give me the biggest trash bag just in the NBA, not as a fantasy player, but just the biggest trash bag in the NBA right now.
I feel like I'm going to take so much flack from the Chicago natives, but it's Derrick Rose, man. I mean,
You're so
and I know.
mean. He's next to Steve Slayton.
And I was about to say I'm going to get so much crap from Chris because this is Steve Slayton part 2. But, dude, the guy spent an entire year 2 seasons ago just practicing. I mean, the guy just spent 2 years practicing. This team got to the playoffs, and he just chilled and watched them on the sidelines. I just can't get over that. I can't get over that.
He's hurt, man. I would.
Yeah, and he's going to be hurt for his entire career. And to be honest, you know what those are? Those are fake injuries. That's the type of injuries I used to get in high school soccer. And you know what I used to do? Put my cleats on and go back out on the field.
He broke his face.
Dude, you ever see my face?
Well, yeah, but that wasn't the result of an injury. You could have gone like Dwight Howard. You could have gone Josh Smith. You could have gone so many doofuses, and you went with. I disagree with that one.
It strikes a chord in me. I don't know. I can't get over the Derrick Rose stuff.
All right, we got a couple more categories. You have alienated the Midwest portion of the show. Just realize, folks, keep listening to the show because he's only on Friday.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, the anti-trash bag. All right, so this is another positive one. You're gonna have a hard time with this one, but the breakout superstar of the second half of the year, as in he is going to win you leagues. So it doesn't matter what percentage he's owned, but he's the guy who's going to bust out and win you leagues.
Yeah. So I wanted to go super deep here, and I'm just going out on a limb because I want to be the person who's famous in America for doing this. You know, I didn't want to go with the guy who you took in the 5th or 6th round and give you any of this Jimmy Graham stuff. So I dug very deep. So deep that I almost even took David Cobb, but I didn't want to take a risk he didn't play. I'm going with David Johnson.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going with David Johnson is we already went over what I think of Chris Johnson. So I think he's going to be out of the equation soon enough. He's not even touching the ball a lot. Andre Ellington already doesn't stay healthy. You're on a team who I think is obviously going to be in the playoffs. They have a great offense. And I've seen glimpses of David Johnson sprinting toward the end zone on those 40, 50-yard grabs or runs. And I think this is a guy where if everything hits perfectly, it doesn't even have to be perfectly, but if this guy gets 15, 16 touches a game, I think this guy could just be super duper. We still have 10 or 11 games left in the NFL season. Why not?
I think it's a nice call, and it's funny because I was on Sig Bloom's podcast, the Audible podcast on the couch there, and he is very high on David Johnson too, and he looks like he might be the goal line back now, so absolutely think that's a lot deeper than I thought you were gonna make the call. And I mean, like last year on the Fantasy Underground podcast, my call was Odell Beckham, which turned out to be a pretty good call, but obviously he was doing something at that point. Like he'd done more than David Johnson had done at this point. So you're right. You will be famous in America, and other you keep ruling out the rest of the world, but we get a lot of worldwide listeners.
I'm going to be famous on Earth.
That's right. I can't speak to any extraterrestrial listening. I don't know. I don't know how what we have in that regard. But
by the way, on the David Johnson note, and maybe I know you watch a lot of game tape. You've seen this guy run. Does he remind you at all of Adrian Peterson in the open field? Or am I just crazy?
Yeah, you're crazy.
Okay.
No. He's not powerful like that. He's not really a slasher. He's more a big guy who gets going fast, straightforward, real well. I'm not sure he really has a lot of moves, and he doesn't really want to hit you.
Okay, edit that portion out. That never happened.
No, I mean, but listen, if he takes that job, it's a good job. I'm with you. All right, so finally, this is the one that everyone was waiting for. They were wishing that we led off with it, but I had to save it for the end.
Sure.
This is the trash bag of the year so far.
So I wanted to make this one extra special. So the nominees are Brandon Cooks of the New Orleans Saints.
Cue Brandon Cooks going, why is the camera on me?
Wait, what did I do? C.J. Anderson of the Denver Broncos.
Cue the picture of C.J. Anderson nodding, going, yeah, that's fair.
And Eddie Lacy of the Green Bay Packers.
Cue the camera of Eddie Lacy eating a sandwich.
And the trash baggie of the year so far goes to, obviously, C.J. Anderson.
Yes.
So, I mean, like Lacy, Anderson was a first-round pick, but unlike Lacy, this guy's done absolutely nothing. He's starring, obviously, in Monty Ball Part 2, Legend of C.J. Anderson. No touchdown.
Wouldn't it be like Legend of Rondane?
I don't know. I'll talk to my producer about that. But this guy at this point has no touchdowns, no games over 10 points, no games of 15 carries, hasn't broke 50 rushing yards yet. You took him in the first round. I mean, it's just awful, dude. And he's not coming back from this. I'm sitting here and I was looking at his stats and I wanted to pick him as this guy who's going to, come back out of nowhere and he's going to save your second half of the year. It's not happening, man. It's not happening.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think, you and I have both been saying for a couple weeks, don't buy low. Like originally we were, and then we saw more tape and we're like, it's just really hard to see the path. As much as I like to waffle and, say, well, I can see lots of forking paths, maybe it turns around. Like, I'm not as scared about Peyton Manning. I think Peyton Manning actually could come back and be okay.
Offensive line for you, right?
It's the offensive line, and plus, what's he done to warrant any sort of full-time work? Ronnie Hillman has been better, if anything, and, we just need to rid ourselves of the idea that this offense is the same. It's just not. It's not the Broncos' offense of the last 3 years. No matter what happens, they're not scoring 40 points a game anymore. They're not getting 5 cracks from inside the 5 anymore. It's just... If that's not happening, you can't value the Broncos running backs highly. Let me ask you a C.J. Anderson question. You're in a 12-team league.
Yes.
Is he already on the waiver wire? Even if you've been holding on, is it time?
No, I'm still holding him for maybe 2 more weeks. See what happens right after they come out of that bye week.
Yeah.
They got the big game versus the Packers. Maybe he does something and then I flip him. No, but for real, I want to see 1 or 2 more weeks, and I think by week 8 or 9, if he's not producing, he's waiver wire.
Yeah, because you have to ask yourself, what's really available that's so urgent that you have to, that you can't find someone else on your team to waive. You're not starting him. Nobody in the world is saying start him outside of the worst bye week situations imaginable. And obviously he's on bye this week, but I think I probably agree with you in a 12-team league. 10-team league, he's gone. He's already gone.
Yep.
He doesn't need to be on a roster for sure.
And for that person who actually has guts and goes out on a limb and, pays for C.J. Anderson, if he does well, not only will he be famous on Earth, but the universe.
Well, I don't know how the message gets out there. It's a podcast, dude. It's not being actually broadcast. We'll have to send computer files into space.
In due time.
All right. Well, if any episode of any podcast ever is going to wind up in a time capsule, it's clearly this one.
Yep.
Because you are Cousin Josh, and those were the Midseason Baggy Awards. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for doing it. I hope you enjoyed your song.
And on that note, cuckoo, Allen Robinson.
Thanks, man.
All right, man. Be good.
Remember, you can follow Cousin Josh on Twitter, and please do, @DetectiveFish, Fisch. Thanks again to Chris Gentile. Your edible arrangement is most likely on its way. Cousin Josh is a man of his word. Remember to go to MacWeldon.com and buy some underwear. What's more important than making sure your boys are comfortable? And ladies, what's more important than making sure his boys are comfortable? Mac Weldon's got underpants and t-shirts and socks. It's super high quality stuff at a reasonable price. Plus, if you go to MacWeldon.com and use my promo code Harris, you get 20% off, which is a lot. So support the little podcast that could, and keep your boys comfortable. Remember to follow me on Twitter @Harris Football, and I'll post when I update ranks based on what's happening in the world this weekend. Sunday, an hour before kickoff, I'll do another video Q&A and answer all your lineup questions, so be on the lookout for that. Hey, thank you so much. This is a great week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the games, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The end theme is Tooth and Claw by OU Villain. Subscribe to the Harris Football Podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.